Today is all about indoor seed starting setups. Let's go. Hey friends, it's Kendall, your joyful farmer. Starting seeds indoors lets you grow out your own transplants. It also allows you to get a head start on the season and grow varieties that you won't find at garden centers. I do a lot of winter sowing. I use a greenhouse and I do a lot of direct sowing out in the garden, but we also start a lot of plants indoors from seed. The good news is you can start seeds indoors successfully at almost any budget. And there's always a way to improve your seed starting setup that you already have. In this video, I walk you through several seed starting setups from super low budget to high budget, how to use them, the pros and cons of each, and considerations to help you decide which one is right for you. And at the end, I'll also share with you some extra items. They're some of my favorites that I love to use to make indoor seed starting easier and improve success. So first, let's talk about the ultra low cost setup. This is if you have $5 to $15 to spend to start seeds indoors. In this setup, the only thing that you're actually purchasing is a medium for starting seeds. A coco coir or peat-based potting mix will work just fine. Just look for a fine, fluffy mix that is not full of wood chips, or you can sift out the big chunks of material. Buying potting mix rather than a sterile seed starting mix will actually provide some nutrition to your seedlings as they grow into transplants. In this scenario, you'll also need recycled containers or low-cost containers. You can repurpose any plastic food container like a yogurt cup or a cottage cheese container. You could even use one larger tray and divide the soil into soil blocks by pressing cardboard into the soil. This will divide your soil into a grid to help your seedlings each have their own space. You'll also need a sunny windowsill. A window that is facing south is ideal if you're in the northern hemisphere, and if you're in the southern hemisphere, a window facing north is going to be your best bet in the winter and early spring. You might also want something to poke drainage holes as needed. This could be a drill, anything pointy and sharp like an ice pick or a knife that you use really carefully, or you can even use a hot glue gun to melt holes into the containers. So how would you go about this? I would poke small drainage holes in the bottom of your container. If you're using a solo cup, one drainage hole is enough. More holes will provide more air to the roots and soil, which is a good thing. It also helps to get a large tray. A shallow plastic tub or an aluminum pan works great so that you have a place to put your containers and catch any water draining from the containers. I just pulled this container out of the barn and also some old solo cups. This would work just fine. Also, aluminum foil trays are really inexpensive and are reusable for years. And if you have old plastic pots that you got from nurseries, or you've got a friend that maybe bought plants for their garden, you can always repurpose these and use them year after year. Next, you're going to fill the containers with soil. Again, any fine potting mix or potting soil works great. If it says garden soil on the bag, just be sure to check the bag to see if it's recommended for starting seeds or for young plants. If you are growing in a sunny windowsill and you're using solo cups, I would highly recommend that you fill the soil all the way to the top of the container. This will allow the seed to get the most light possible so that it's not buried down in the solo cup and the light's being blocked by the sides of the cup. I would pre-moisten your potting soil before you fill the cups. Then you're going to plant the seeds by following the depth that's listed on the seed packet. Most of them are really shallow. Be careful to keep an eye on that depth. Then you're going to want to make sure that your seeds stay moist in the container. You can water gently by misting, or you can pour water carefully over them so that the seeds don't wash away. A cup with holes poked in the bottom of it can work just fine to help you sprinkle the water onto the top of your seedlings. And you can also cover your containers with clear saran wrap, and that will hold that moisture into the soil and increase your germination rate. And after seedlings start to grow, you could use your large tray to bottom water your seedlings. That means that you're pouring water into the bottom of the tray and letting each container soak up that water. Just make sure that you pour off any excess water so that your containers aren't just sitting in water. Next, you're going to place them in sunlight. Any window that gets the most sun in your house is going to work just fine. Then it also helps to rotate the containers daily. If you rotate the containers every day, that'll make sure that your seedlings are getting equal access to as much light as possible to prevent them from getting leggy and leaning toward the light. Also, I want to mention here that for germination, you actually don't need seedling heat mats to start seeds indoors. Most seeds will start just fine in the ambient temperature of your house if it's 65 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit. I actually germinate seeds indoors without supplemental heat all the time. Even heat-loving plants like peppers and eggplants will germinate. They just sometimes take a bit longer to do so. So the pros for this type of option is that it is the cheapest option, it's great for beginners, it reuses materials, and the cons are that the weak light can sometimes cause leggy seedlings, and if your pets like windows in your house, it can create a little bit of a complication. Early on in my gardening journey, I used solo cups in an aluminum pan. I used these for multiple years in a row. Sometimes I would even use the double cup method for solo cups by putting a cup that has drainage holes into a cup that does not have drainage holes and add water to that bottom cup in order to bottom water my baby plants. It wasn't a perfect method, but it did work to start plants early. Also, as an aside, if you're looking for a really inexpensive way to start seeds, I should mention winter sowing here. If you're not needing to start plants early indoors and you're willing to wait on Mother Nature to germinate and grow seedlings for you, winter sowing is inexpensive and I would say even easier than starting indoors. I'll link a couple videos about winter sowing and also how to hack winter sowing to start plants a little bit earlier in the description below. The next option is a basic starter kit setup. This is anywhere from $25 to $40. Things you'll need are seed trays or cell packs. These containers I found on Amazon that I think are 5 for $12. Often include a plastic humidity dome, and this is for germinating your seeds, not for growing your seedlings long term. Here's a 32 cell tray. This one my mom is currently growing beets in, and this one has a humidity dome as well. This is more of a medium size. And then there are also 72 cell trays. Those are the ones I use most frequently when I'm growing my plants indoors, and you can get humidity domes for those as well. Or I like to just use cling wrap or saran wrap on the top of the trays whenever I'm germinating seeds to help hold the moisture in. You'll also need potting mix, of course, and a sunny window. If you're willing to spend at least $20 on a grow light, that's going to help you as well. To use the cell trays, you're going to make sure to fill them evenly with pre-moistened potting soil or potting mix. Lightly press it down, don't compact it. Plant 1 to 2 seeds per cell. And in order to help keep the moisture consistent in the soil, you can cover with a humidity dome or even just saran wrap or cling wrap on the soil surface works perfectly well to help keep the moisture in. Just make sure that you remove the dome or plastic after the seeds have sprouted. This way you'll prevent mold and disease. And of course you want to make sure that the trays are getting plenty of light. Keep your seedlings as close to the light source as possible. If you have this type of a budget and you're starting seeds indoors and you have $20 to choose between a grow light and a heat mat, I would always recommend the grow light. You can always adjust your calendar and start warm-loving seeds like tomatoes and peppers a little bit earlier and still get them to germinate without a heat mat, but lights will really help your plants to grow to a viable full transplant size. There are smaller tabletop LED lights that, when combined with a bright window, that light will be just fine for a small 10 by 20 countertop grow space. The pros of using a setup like this is that it is a little bit more organized, you might get a little better moisture control from it, and it is reusable year after year. The cons are that you're still limited by window light or the smaller space underneath the grow light. And smaller cells are going to require potting up of transplants. The smaller cell trays work to get seeds started, but there will come a time when the tomatoes or other plants that you're growing have 2 to 3 sets of true leaves, and they will start to slow their growth and become root bound in the smaller cells if you don't pot them up or plant them out. Next is more of a budget grow light setup for starting plants indoors. This is if you have $40 to $70 to spend. What you're going to need here is a shop light or LED grow light, A set of linkable shop lights work great for this purpose. They can be linked together so that they only need one outlet. Just look for at least 2,000 lumens and 5,000 K or 6,500 K light. We like this 4-pack of 6,500 K lights that are 4,400 lumens. That's just $40 on Amazon. They're really bright, but they're also LEDs that won't burn your seedlings. You'll also need to hang or place the light 2 to 3 inches above your seedlings. You could hang them under a cabinet and have the trays on a countertop. That works well, or put them on a shelf that you already have. Or you could even hang them underneath a table and have your seedlings on some boxes on the floor, as long as the lights are 1 to 3 inches above the top of the plants at all times. Of course, you're also going to need seed trays. If you set up shop lights that are 3 lights across, you can put up to 4 10-20 trays across in that area. If you're growing smaller transplants, you could pay $30 to $40 for 5 72 cell trays and flat trays to sit beneath each tray, which is up to 288 plants in 72 cell trays. Or if you plan to pot up plants into 2.5 or 3-inch pots, about 18 of this size pot fits in a 10-20 tray. So you'll be able to fit around 54 plants of this size under 3 shop lights. That'll cost you around the same amount. Or you can get 5 10-20 flat trays and invest in a $20 to $30 2-inch soil blocker. Then you could potentially start 32 2-inch blocks per 10-20 tray and start 128 2-inch soil blocked plants under the 3 grow lights. I love soil blocking. There are lots of benefits to starting that way. Or you could even use a smaller 3/4 inch soil blocker to fit somewhere around 480 soil blocks underneath 3 shop lights. But you can see the shop lights do buy you a larger amount of growing space. You can also get a timer for around $10 that will keep your grow lights on for 16 hours per day. It's optional, but really helpful. Now, after you set up the light, start your seeds, and keep them moist until germination, you will need to keep an eye on the height of the lights. As plants grow, you'll want to raise the lights, keeping them close to that light source. You don't have to adjust the lights every day, but once the baby plants start touching the lights, it's time to adjust the chains to lift them up a little bit. With a greater number of seedlings, it is helpful to have an extra tray around to bottom water the cell trays or pots that you have, or you can simply use a small watering can and add water to the bottom of your soil block trays. So the pros of a grow light setup like this: you're going to have strong, compact seedlings. It also works anywhere. You don't need a window. You can set it up in a closet in your house if you'd like. There also tends to be a better success rate with more thriving transplants if you have a little bit stronger grow lights. Some cons are that there is a little bit of a higher upfront cost, and it does need some setup space. Also, if you decide to use grow lights, make sure you plan for the space that your plants will need when they need to be potted up. The last thing that you want is to start 288 little baby plants, and then it's still too cold outside to transplant them, and you need to pot them up into larger containers, or you end up having to buy more grow lights. The next setup is what I would call more of a mid-range indoor growing station. This is if you have $100 to $200 to spend. What you're going to need here is a shelving unit. We really love this size that's 6 feet tall and has 6 shelves, and it's also on casters, so it's mobile. This one I found for $80 on Amazon. If you already have some shelving around, that's great too. We just really like the functionality of the wired shelves on the casters. Next, you'll need multiple LED grow lights for your multiple shelves. There are linkable 6,000 K lights in a 12-pack that I found on Amazon for $110. These are some that we've used in the past and work well. This allows for 3 lights per shelf on 4 shelves with the 12 lights total. And with the shelf we're using here, that means that you could have 4 fully lit shelves and up to 16 10-20 trays on them. And since there are 6 shelves on this shelf, if you don't want to buy 3 more lights for the 5th shelf, you can use the bottom shelf and the top shelf for storage. You also might want to consider heat mats. They're optional for any of these setups, but they are helpful. If you want a couple of heat mats and possibly a thermostat to regulate the temperature, you could spend between $20 and $40 on those. Heat mats are especially useful for nightshades like peppers, eggplants, tomatillos, and other worm-loving annuals, especially if you keep your house cool during the winter. It can really encourage those seeds to germinate. We also have a mylar reflective sheet that helps to reflect the light back onto the shelves. This is optional, but it's really cheap. They're like $3 a piece on Amazon, or a white wall or white poster board can work to help reflect that light as well. And you could also add some clip-on fans if you wanted to for about $20 a piece. You could even just use one and rotate it to a new shelf each day to get the benefits of a fan on your transplants. So to use it, you're going to assemble the shelves. You're going to add 3 lights per shelf by just simply attaching the chains to the wire shelves. That's really easy. You could do 2 lights per shelf, but then you'd have to turn the trays lengthwise so that they run the length of the lights. Then you would start your seeds like you usually would. You can use humidity domes or saran wrap, or just mist the top of the soil when you notice that it's getting dry to keep the seeds moist until germination. When I'm seeding larger quantities of seed, I tend to use 2 to 3 seeds per cell, especially when I'm growing on a larger scale, unless the seed is on the expensive side. Then I might sprout them in a separate container and pot them up separately into the cell trays. But after they've sprouted, I often do move some to cells that are empty, or I'll thin them by clipping them to make sure that the cells aren't overcrowded. Also, automating your lights by plugging them into a timer is a really easy step to make your life easier. You can set it so that the lights are on for 16 hours and off for 8 hours. This simulates summer daylight hours, and that'll help your transplants to grow a little bit faster. So some pros of this setup are that you do have excellent control over what you're growing. You've got a higher success rate for larger numbers of plants. It's also reusable year after year. So once you have it forever. The cons are that it does take up space and it is a higher initial investment. But if you were growing on a larger scale, or you're planning on giving away or selling extra plants, or if you live somewhere that your frost-free growing season is really short, like 3 to 4 months, this might be the setup for you. Really quickly, if you're finding this content helpful, I would love it if you would consider liking, subscribing, or sharing it so that we can continue to share the joy of growing with others. I also want to share with you a little bit more advanced setup if you want to spend $250 or more on an indoor growing setup. In this scenario, you can get an integrated grow rack that's already set up for you, or you can get a grow tent. A good sized grow tent is about $150 and up. You'll also need full spectrum LED lights. We really do like the shop lights that are full spectrum and they're linkable, but you can also invest in lights that have an adjustable output to provide different types of light for different plants or growth stages. And again, you'll also want automated timers for lights. We tend to have 1 automated timer per shelf. And fans for air circulation are very important if you're using a grow tent setup. I would recommend at least 1 fan to use in the tent. And there are even smart controls that you can get to automate the humidity and temperature in the grow tent. I've not personally had a need for these, but it could be something you want to try. So you can really spend hundreds of dollars on getting a grow tent set up. The one that we have is 4 feet by 8 foot wide and then 6.5 feet tall. The shelves, lights, timers, and fan probably cost about $600 or so total, but we've added additional lights and shelves over time. So this hasn't been something that we've purchased all at once. It's something that we've really invested in over time. Some things to know about when using a grow tent or multiple grow light shelves. When seeds are first germinating, they really like high humidity of 70 to 80%. And then as seedlings start to develop their leaves, they're happy with humidity at about 50%. I like to have lights and fans on timers so that they're not constantly running. And air circulation in a grow tent is better than stationary air. It will strengthen your plant stems and reduce risk of disease. We like to rotate the fans around to different locations as needed. You also want to monitor the moisture carefully in a grow tent. Especially with heat mats and a sealed tent, the heat and humidity can get pretty high pretty quickly. You want to monitor it, and a thermometer and hygrometer can help you with that. There's one by Govee that's, I think, $13 on Amazon right now that you can even link to an app on your phone. And it will even record data for you, which is nice. You'll have to open or close the tent based on the ambient temperature in the room and the environment in the tent. So if your tent is in a garage or somewhere that's not climate controlled, you can also provide supplemental heat with a ceramic heater or even a tubular heater. So it does take a little bit of monitoring, learning, and adjusting to figure out what's going to work best for your grow tent in any given time of the year. But the cool thing about a grow tent is that you really can control your conditions better and protect your baby plants from that colder weather outdoors, or even hot weather if you're starting seeds indoors in July like we often do here in North Texas. But overall, pay attention to the conditions and check on your plants regularly so that you can make adjustments. There will be times that we completely unzip and open the doors of the grow tent to allow air circulation to come in and out. There will be other times that we completely close up the grow tent to keep it warm in there, and sometimes we'll just vent the doors by opening them about halfway and just allowing some of the air to circulate in the top of the grow tent. So the pros for this setup are you can really create ideal indoor conditions for starting seeds and growing out baby plants. You can watch the humidity and the temperature and make adjustments by venting and using fans. You're also able to fit a large quantity of plants indoors without the need for a greenhouse outdoors, which is really ideal for serious gardeners or if you're really looking to have an abundance of plants. You also can get really highly consistent outcomes with conditions that are fairly predictable, and they give you faster growing transplants. The cons are that it's obviously expensive. There are startup costs as well as costs to keep it climate controlled, and those can add up. Obviously, it's also overkill if you're just a casual grower. So those are the different setups to fit within certain budgets, but I do also have a few items that you might want to consider using that might help you troubleshoot some indoor seed starting issues. First, when we're growing a large quantity of plants indoors, we like to keep an eye on the fungus gnat population, and we do this by using yellow sticky traps. When we start to see adults land on the traps and get stuck, we'll add a little bit of BT or Bacillus thuringiensis to the water that we're watering the plants with in order to eliminate the fungus gnat larvae in the soil and help control the population. We typically add BT to the water once every week to keep a population in check. So a couple of additional supplies you might need for this are a small watering can or a spray bottle that you use to drench with BT water, yellow fungus gnat sticky traps, and BT. Or some people, for a less expensive option, use a hydrogen peroxide drench to treat for fungus gnats as well. Fungus gnats can really do damage to your plants. The larvae will feed on the fine roots, so it's really best to keep tabs on them and make sure to control their numbers. Next, to moisten your soil while you're waiting for germination, or to also apply BT for fungus gnats to drench the soil completely, you might want to consider a pump sprayer. I love these things because they make it easier to water by misting rather than a spray bottle with a squeeze handle that you're squeezing over and over again. I also like to water with distilled water. So if I'm using tap water to water my baby plants or seedlings, I like to fill the jug, leave the lid off for 24 hours, and let the chlorine dissipate before I use the water. For fertilizer, I love Neptune's Harvest seaweed fertilizer. It's not as strong smelling as fish emulsion, and it's really gentle for baby plants. Also, if your baby plants have a 3-inch cube of soil space and a general use potting soil with nutrients already in the medium, you can often get away without fertilizing at all while growing your transplants. You can also mix some worm castings into the potting soil before you sow your seeds. And if you do that at about a 1:10 ratio, you can really add some nutrition to that potting soil and help feed your baby plants as they keep growing. Or you could also do this when you up pot your seedlings into 3-inch pots or larger soil blocks. Next, I did mention a little bit about fans, and though they're not essential to growing out baby plants indoors, they are a secret weapon for a lot of people. They can improve the strength of your plants, reduce the risk of disease or damping off that causes the loss of baby plants. They can also help to dry the soil more evenly, and air circulation can even help the growth to be more even across your trays. So a fan set to low, whether it's oscillating or stationary that you move and adjust occasionally, can really make a big difference. You can even run it for just a few hours a day to get benefits from it. And a hygrometer slash thermometer combination can help you monitor and regulate the temperature and humidity to keep your conditions ideal. Also, I will mention you probably want to label well and then also take notes. For labels, I like to use sturdy tags like popsicle sticks or reusable outdoor grade plastic tags. I like a good garden marker or oil-based Sharpie to write on them. And if you go ahead and create a sturdy label and put it in your tray when you're starting the seeds, you can stick it in the soil out in the garden when you transplant your plants. Also, if you learn through journaling and note-taking, you might also want to consider recording things like your dates planted, germination times, light schedule, and success rates so that you can learn and make adjustments as needed, especially if you're first getting started. And last but not least, certainly not necessary, but a very handy tool to speed up germination is my favorite, a germination chamber. A seedling heat mat and domes can work as a germination chamber, but I love our DIY germination chamber. It's an old, broken, small fridge with a crock pot full of water in it, set to turn on with a thermostat. I can set it to the ideal germination temperature for different seeds, like 85 degrees for hot peppers, and it typically cuts germination time in half or even by 2/3 if I start seeds this way. It is awesome. You probably can buy something similar or construct one with styrofoam or other materials, but this one works great for us. I do wish it was a little wider so that I could slide the 10-20 size trays straight in flat, but it still works great. So I really hope this was helpful, seeing our different seed starting setups and different options based on your budget. I have linked an Amazon list of all the different seed starting items that you might want to incorporate into your setup. If you have more suggestions for ways to improve an indoor seed starting setup, if there's something I forgot, or if you have questions, please put them in the comments below. I wish you joy, and I'll see you next time.